Hey y'all, welcome to Geeking Out, the podcast about all geeky aspects of software delivery, DevOps, observability, reliability, and everything in between. I'm your host, Adriana Villela, coming to you from Toronto, Canada. And geeking out with me today is Ori Shoshan of Authorize. Welcome, Ori.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Super excited to have you here today. Where are you calling in from today?
So I'm actually in Berlin, but normally I'm in the periphery of Tel Aviv, Israel.
Cool. Well, let's get started with our lightning round questions. Are you ready? Okay. First of all, are you left-handed or right-handed?
It's a complicated answer. I know you said the lightning round was gonna be easy.
It's
But,
all good.
I'm left-handed on the computer, but I write with my right hand. You can thank my school for that. They basically made me use my right hand, so I guess I'm ambidextrous, but I tend to write I basically just sign stuff with my right hand at this point in life.
Yeah.
Because everything else is on the phone or typed. So yay. Whew.
Oh, so you were probably born a lefty but turned into a righty.
Yeah. But I like my left-handed mouse.
That's
Um,
interesting. I'm left-handed and I never got the left-handed mouse thing. I think because the first time that someone
mm,
presented a mouse to me was like a right-handed mouse, so I never even thought of like holding it
mm,
with my left hand.
yeah, that's a big
So
problem. I always have to when I buy a new mouse. Sometimes I feel like the as the years go on, it gets harder and harder to find like a symmetric mouse that isn't specifically for right-handed people.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Actually, you just made me think of like, do you remember like the old? I think it was like the Microsoft mouse that was like it was shaped
Mm.
for right-handed people, and I remember thinking, oh my god, if you're left-handed, you're screwed.
Exactly. Yeah. So I make do with the smaller mice, but it's nice. It's an excuse to buy a gamer mice sometimes.
Ooh, ooh. But it must be yeah, but it must be hard to like find a cool mouse that will like either be ambidextrous or like tailored for left-handed mousers.
Yeah, but it's a once in a few years thing. I just
Yeah,
wish it was more like headphones where you can basically buy the same pair again and again when they go bad.
that's true. As long as
I,
they don't discontinue it.
yeah, with the
I'm
mice, like every
sadly
time I want to buy this mouse again and like they don't make it anymore. So I have to find like the closest one.
yeah, I feel you. I feel you. Okay, next question. iPhone or Android?
Android.
All right. Um, Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Um, Honestly, Windows, even though I use Mac daily. Because I've given up because everybody else at the company wanted Macs, so I didn't
Yeah.
want to be the odd one out. But I'm a Windows guy through and through.
Ah, interesting, interesting. I grew up on Windows, and then the first time I used a Mac, I hated it so much, and now I'm a full like Mac convert. But I remember when Windows came out, I was like, "This is the greatest thing ever."
I think the thing that gets me is I've been in software development a lot of years by now, and so
Yeah,
on Windows, I really know how things work, like beneath the outer shell. And when something doesn't work in the system, like I know how to debug it. But with Mac OS, my understanding only goes so far.
yeah,
So it's if you see the famous beach ball spinning and something stuck on Windows, like I would know how to figure out what is doing that.
yeah.
But on Mac, I feel useless. I'm just like, okay, better force close it and try again.
Yeah. Pray that it fixes itself. I find that the funniest thing on Mac that ever happened to me is when I got like the Mac's equivalent of the blue screen of death, but it was
Mm.
so polite. And I'm like, oh shoot, when this happens, I know I'm in trouble. I think I
Yeah,
only got it once, but I was like, damn, I should have taken like a picture of it.
I don't even know what it looks like. I think I've had a few the last couple of weeks because I opened my laptop into oh, everything's closed. And by the way, we've crashed. So you want to send an error report maybe? But I didn't get to see the actual crash screen.
Oh yeah, no, I got a I gotta find a picture to include in the show notes. I'm sure someone's taken a picture of it.
It's hard to see. They don't let you see it.
Yeah, that's right. It's like a Yeti sighting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, next question. What's your favorite programming language?
It changes along the years. Right now, it's Golang, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I like to say it's a language for stupid people, and I'm one of those stupid people because it's really prescriptive about how you should do things. Like generally, most of the time, there's only one way to do something,
Yeah.
and I find that's really valuable. I think it's insane that I can look at our own code base, like the backend and our open source code base and the Kubernetes code base, and they look pretty similar. And other languages, not so much. I think Rust code bases will look very different. Don't get me started with C++, where a language basically it's worse than JavaScript. The language reinvents itself every couple of years. And there's so much sorcery to know. I probably couldn't read C++ code by now, even though like 6 years ago it was what I was doing all day.
Oh wow.
And before that it was Python. Python
I
will
love
always have a
Python.
dear place in my heart, but it got complicated in Python 3. When they added async await, it got kind of fragmented.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, I do agree with you, Python. I have much love for Python. I started out in Java and Java, like, I don't know, it's like coding in spaghetti. It's like such a verbose language. And most of my career was Java, but I'm like, nah, Java, I'm over you. I do like Go. It's like generally succinct. Except with error handling, it's kind of weird.
Yeah, it is weird, and it's a common refrain. I feel like a macro could help there, but I actually like the concept of like, no, this is how you do things, and there are clear downsides to using panics. You could use them theoretically as exceptions, as you would use exceptions in Python.
Yeah.
But I like that they say, this is how you do things, just do it this way, shut up.
Yeah, I do like I do like prescriptive things in that manner. I think we can do with more prescriptive languages, to be honest.
It's just so opinionated, and at the same time, like they leave some stuff out. Like it's not so batteries included that
Yeah.
you don't have to do anything, which is a strange combination, but I feel it works well.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next question, dev or ops?
Mm. So can I say both? I feel like probably a lot
Yeah.
of people say this.
So a couple of people have said DevOps, so I'm like, yeah. But it's okay to have
Yeah,
a preference of one over the other or like both. It's totally cool. Like I said, no wrong answers.
yeah, I guess both. Because nowadays it's the popular thing to like DevOps, and if you talk to people who work at like I think at Apple they still separate like dev and SREs a lot. And you would I talked to people who said they basically just throw stuff over the wall over to ops and they get to deploy it. And I really enjoy looking at the entire stack. So DevOps is for my spirit. I like seeing things happen end to end and like understanding, like I said about Mac, that I can
Yeah.
only debug so far.
Yeah.
So I like that about DevOps, that I know what the code is and where it runs, and when something strange happens, I can understand the system as a whole. That's really appealing to me.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Awesome. Okay, next question, JSON or YAML?
Um, JSON, yeah. Yeah, the spaces. It's also like that spaces or tabs
Yeah.
being part of syntax. Another thing I
That
hate
should be
about
a question
Python,
I should ask, spaces or tabs.
it's just there are so many discussions about that. Like, should we use this or that in Python too?
Yeah.
And it's like it's meaningless. And so many stupid bugs just by missing one space. Ugh, no, definitely JSON. Even though it's annoying too, but I don't know I don't think that there's an ideal choice.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I did have one person say HCL, which I'm kind of down for because I feel like it's if JSON was like a little more pared down with some of the love from YAML.
Yeah. Yeah, HCL is like a bit closer to INI files, right? INI files.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. But it is simpler to parse, I feel like. I got to use them in the Windows part of my career.
Nice. All right, 2 more questions left. All right. So do you prefer to consume content through video or text?
Definitely text.
That seems to be the winner so far. I've had some where it's like it depends, but it's mostly text.
I feel like it's a little bit of a cultural thing. Like
Yeah.
in the front end community, it seems that, or even JavaScript in general, I feel like videos are much more common. But growing up in the C++, no one will tell you anything. Just read man pages and like MSDN documentation. I have a hard time when I can't like scroll past stuff. So a video is like the antithesis for that.
I know, right? Yeah, that's my biggest issue also is like I need to be able to skim and search easily, and video just makes it a little bit harder. I use video out of desperation. It's like I have no other options, and all Google is giving me is a bunch of videos. I'm like, crap.
Yeah, exactly. But for some things, it can be useful, and I get why it's more popular with front end because you want to see stuff.
Yeah,
in many cases. So,
yeah, I definitely agree. I
can understand it.
All right, final question. What is your superpower?
Ooh, yeah. So can I say my wife? Like, can it be not something about me? I guess.
Sure. That's probably our most creative answer so far.
Because I guess, like, at Otterize, we're not even 2 years old now. And, being a founder is very demanding in terms of, like, time and stress. And, it's even the stress is showing up here and here, I like to say. So my wife has been really supportive this entire time, and just beyond not just being supportive or understanding, she like talks to me about stuff, and it really helps me think things through, which can be important. And honestly, I think I would probably do a much worse job if not for her, because she really helps me process things, which is really important in such a stressful environment where you can, like, if you're too stressed out, you can reach for knee-jerk reactions, and that's the opposite of what you want to do, since you want to like manage and not react.
Yeah. So she kind of helps center things for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And it's honestly, I think that the biggest thing that has had an influence on how I do things. It gives a lot of she gives a lot of like space and support.
That's great. I really love to hear that. And, I think this is actually a perfect segue for, our topic of conversation because, as you mentioned, you are a founder of Authorize. So why don't you tell us a little bit about like what Authorize is all about, how the idea came about, and what it's like to be a founder, because you hear stories of like the stress.
Yeah. I think, okay, let me start with Otterize. I was going to start with the end. So Otterize, what we do, the name is a funny joke that alludes to what we do. So we do authorization for your backend. So it's called Authorize because if you're Israeli and you say authorize, and otters, they're cute animals, so it's a win-win. It's a pun.
Totally. I love it.
So what we do is we make declarative zero trust easy. We have released open source tooling that lets you map your Kubernetes clusters. And using that map, you can then auto-generate what we call client intents. So each backend service in your cluster declares its intentions or which is what it needs to access. So say I have a service that needs to access a database, an AWS IAM resource, another service. So my intent would say I need to access this thing. And it does this in a high-level Kubernetes resource called client intents. And then Authorize figures out how to configure your infrastructure to make it work. Whether that means something like Kubernetes network policies or AWS IAM policies or Kafka ACL rules or whatever infrastructure you have. And we do that all open source with a Kubernetes operator. And I guess in one sentence, it would be to make access control not a nightmare, because there are so many different kinds. And like as a developer, what you want to do is, I just want to call this freaking API and have it work. But then all of a sudden you've got to configure IAM policies, and that other service, that's in a different cluster. So they have a different way that you need to authenticate and authorize. So as an aside to all that, I still get to do quite a bit of hands-on work, which is fun. And it's thanks to my awesome team that is very independent and awesome.
That sounds super cool. And I think it's, I think as our software is only getting more and more complex, and, these like IAM is, I think, the bane of like our existence in this space, and to be able to make it accessible, easier, less nightmarish, is awesome, and I definitely very much needed in this space, and to be able to also codify in a standardized way. Who'd have thought? I think that's a very, very awesome use case. So yay, nice to see a tool like that in the space.
Yeah, because as a developer, you want to say, I need to connect to that thing. You don't care if it happens with IAM and you need like 1,000 different permissions. So we want to take all that away. The security team cares. You don't care. So you shouldn't care.
Is it that is the intent that like you work, like developers work with the security team to kind of determine like what those policies are supposed to be, but then the developers can, I guess, self provision that access? Is that how it works? Or?
Yeah, essentially, because what we've learned is that in most cases, security teams don't actually care to approve the policy, except in very sensitive cases, like if there's the ledger service for a bank has an API that transfers money. So that one might be approved on a case-by-case basis, but in a lot of other cases, they just want to know that the access is intentional, that it's not an attacker, just like they want to know that the code that gets deployed to production has been reviewed and approved, but they don't want to review the code themselves. Right. So, and developers also don't want to talk to the security team. So both sides don't want to talk. They just want to get access and for it to be intentional.
Yeah. That's so great. I love that use case. And so, going back to so we understand what Authorize does. Tell us a little bit about like starting up this company. How has that been? And how long have you guys been around?
We've been around since January 2022.
Okay.
And well, it's been a crazy journey, as I guess any startup founder would say that.
Yeah. I would imagine.
I think the biggest surprise for me would be I came into this as the CTO, and the CTO at a small size manages the dev team in the early stages. So I thought, like, hey, this is going to be similar to managing a small team of developers, which I've done many times before. So
yeah.
But what it turned out to be is I found out that when you start a new company, it's not just about managing the team, because in an existing culture, an existing company, a lot of decisions have been made already. When you go to make a new decision, like should we use this language or this library, like the smallest decisions within an existing culture, a lot of decisions around that serve effectively as guardrails.
Yeah.
And in a new company, even though everyone we hired were people we knew personally and worked with and have even worked together sometimes, some of them, when we all joined, like day one, everybody has been to different companies. Like the previous company was different. So they all come with slightly different expectations for culture, for technical choices. So the challenge is less about, how do you make at bigger companies, the challenge is about how do you move quickly and like how do you keep quality and all that. And for a new startup, I feel like the challenge is how do you end up with the right culture and do it quickly while everyone gets a chance to express themselves and feels included, while taking into account that everybody has different expectations day one.
Yeah.
And that all happens really quickly. Like at a big company, when you start a new team, people might like trickle in, but you start day one with like 4 new people. So now you're 4 developers and the founders, and you're like, oh my God, so all of this has to happen at once. And everybody also really wants to move quickly.
Right.
And, beyond that, it just teaches you a lot about how a business works, like any business, the technical stuff, how does payroll work, all kinds of regulation. You learn a ton of stuff, which is really interesting and useful in my day-to-day. I just got a mortgage, and like I understand how banks see lawyers and people and companies, and like how to navigate that, which has been really useful now that I'm super busy.
Yeah.
So how did it all get started? I guess I didn't answer that. So as founders, we have experienced the pain of solving for authorization and authentication at every company repeatedly. And this is like authorization is one of those things that people just sort of accept for what it is.
Yeah.
You start a new project or you need access to something else on IAM, so you accept that it's like this. But it doesn't have to be that way, because Android apps, when you build an Android app or an iOS app, you know that if you specify I need to open the microphone, you don't have to like say which specific API it is, or like it's very high level.
Yeah.
And you know that if the user sees all the permissions that they're gonna need, and if they approve that, then your app is gonna work. And you don't have the same level of confidence and simplicity in cloud native.
Yeah.
You have to say on AWS IAM, if you're using a service that is writing to, like say if you use CloudWatch, it's writing to S3 buckets, and you gotta make sure you also have access to write to the S3 buckets that is going to access beneath it all.
Right.
Which is insane. Like you're just a developer, you're doing one simple thing and you have to think so deep, which I mean, I love.
Yeah.
But I think it slows it down if you have 500 engineers and everybody needs to understand this to make progress. And different teams use different tech stacks. We've seen people struggle with it. We've struggled with it, and we see how it can be better in the mobile world. So, like, why not for cloud native?
Yeah. Yeah.
You shouldn't accept it.
Yeah. I think that's such a great idea. And, I think we see a very, like this recurring theme too in our space, which is like, we keep solving the same problems over and over and over. Right. And you get to the point where like, let me just package it into a damn tool already. Right. Because it's starting to get annoying. Like, why do we need to keep reinventing the wheel? We got better things to do. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, does, you mentioned AWS with Authorize. Does it work with the other like cloud providers as well, or?
It will.
Okay, cool. Nice. You got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah. I think the reason no one has done this before, even though for mobile apps it seemed kind of obvious that both Google and Apple did it.
Yeah.
Is because there are so many different kinds for other kinds of software that it's hard to even put them together. I mean, I don't think a lot of people would put network policies and AWS IAM policies, even though they both have the same word in their name, in the same category.
Yeah.
They would like think of them as different things. It's just it's an architectural problem, right? And you
Yeah.
can't just imagine it all together. So that it's exactly the kind of problem that you would start a company for if you need to
Right.
work on it for a while with a team.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Now switching gears a bit, because I think this is the thing that got us connected initially.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are doing some cool stuff around OpenTelemetry at
Yeah,
Authorize. So why don't you share some of that with our audience?
sure. So we have built a Otterize network mapper, which prior to OpenTelemetry, the way it worked is it was you set it up on your cluster. It's zero config. It's all open source, and it captures DNS traffic and uses that DNS traffic to create a map of your cluster. Now with OpenTelemetry, I've actually had a chance to work with OpenTelemetry relatively recently, but also a while back at my previous employer when parts of it were still called open tracing. Um, and it can be a bit of an involved deployment to get your first few bits of data because you need to integrate SDKs and all that. So the network mapper being an infrastructure level component that you deploy in your cluster, if it was able to export OpenTelemetry metrics, then it could make the first step to OpenTelemetry adoption a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the first step when you add instrumentation is to ask yourselves, what do I want to instrument?
Yes.
And if you don't know what you have, which in a large enough organization as the platform team, which might be keen on implementing OpenTelemetry, that can be where you are. That you don't even know like what are the different components, which is connecting to whom, like what are the dependencies that I care about. And the network mapper had that info, and the awesome team at Lightstep/ServiceNow saw the network mapper and contributed an awesome pull request that exports OpenTelemetry metrics from the network mapper. And it was really a no-brainer for us to like accept the contribution and
Yeah.
support you guys, because we think of the network mapper as that there are a bunch of cybersecurity products with similar capabilities for network mapping, but we really wanted the network mapper to be a standalone thing that you could use independent of the rest of Otterize. So it's really like seeing what was possible to do with Grafana Tempo so easily with the same data that the network mapper has. We saw how it could make people's lives easier. And really, that's what the network mapper is trying to do. To be a simple tool, you can just Helm install on your cluster with zero configuration
Uh-huh.
and get as much value as you can in a complete open source fashion. And that really works well with OpenTelemetry. So, I mean, so far, the Authorize network mapper had a CLI that was using GraphViz to create a visual map of
Mm-hmm.
the traffic. And you could also hook it up to Authorize Cloud to get an interactive map.
Mm-hmm.
But now with OpenTelemetry, you can hook it up to your Grafana instance and get an interactive map, which then helps you see, okay, I'm interested in this service and it's communicating to these three other services. And that's where I want to start with OpenTelemetry.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's pretty powerful, the combination, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so cool to, I think it's nice to see more and more vendors like including OpenTelemetry as part of their products. Because first of all, I think, it shows the staying power of OpenTelemetry. But secondly, like the recognition that, hey, this could help our customers too, right?
Yeah, exactly. And mission number one is to make people successful in what they do.
Yes.
So, and we really want intents and Authorize and like easy network mapping to be something that everybody in the cloud native community has access to. So we have aspirations to turn client intents into the way that you do authorization, even independent of Authorize,
Mm-hmm.
contributing to upstream. So that really falls in line with that. like how do we make the network mapper more useful?
Yeah.
Like a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you seen like internal and external benefits as a result of the work around the network mapper, like with OpenTelemetry?
So it's still quite early.
Fair enough.
I think it's just been out for about a week or so. And I believe we're going to publish a blog post together that will help it get noticed.
Yeah, definitely.
So right now, I think it's depending on people organically discovering it, which, I mean, it can happen and the network mapper gets organic traffic, but people who are specifically looking for OpenTelemetry and like using it with Grafana Tempo are going to be best served by like content that points to that. We want to add a tutorial for that too.
Cool. And what do you have any like future plans around continuing OpenTelemetry integrations?
So we still need to explore that. Off the top of my my mind, I'm not well versed enough
Fair enough.
to say what, but definitely I think there's like even now there's more data that a network mapper has access to. Like if you have Istio or Kafka, then it can tap into resource level or topic level information, which can probably be reflected in OpenTelemetry as well, in like the same infrastructure way. And once we add more capabilities to the network mapper, we want to add cross-cluster discovery and the ability to discover infrastructure outside of Kubernetes from within Kubernetes. So that could also be interesting to add to the OpenTelemetry support.
Right. Awesome. And what is like what kind of can you speak to how OpenTelemetry is being set up? Or is that like do you guys are you guys running like a collector as part of your like internal infrastructure, or how like what does the landscape look like?
So we're pretty new in terms of the internal deployment. I mean, I've had the opportunity to use OpenTelemetry before, but at Otterize, we really only got into it with like you guys saying, hey, remember Grafana Tempo, which we knew about before, but then we were like, of course. So as part of dog fooding, we started with setting up a collector and a Grafana instance, but it's also really fresh at Otterize. But we make it a point to use everything we put out, including contributions, so we know how it works for users.
Amazing.
So we're pretty early there, but yeah.
How's the learning curve been for you, and for like within the company in general, like for OpenTelemetry?
I think there are some pretty cool tutorials and guides for. We've looked particularly at Grafana Tempo, which we said videos and text. So Grafana Tempo has tutorials with screenshots.
Yeah. I always appreciate the tutorials with the screenshots.
So getting like the initial setup has been pretty easy, but we did like I think if we built the integration completely ourselves, then we would have had a slightly steeper learning curve. Because Clay at Lightstep did the research for us of like what the metric should look like and how to configure it.
Right.
So it was pretty straightforward, but I think also for like a user that's trying to use it now, it would also be pretty straightforward because it was just one configuration value that we needed to pass to the network mapper after all is said and done. But I think it's interesting now to explore like what else can we get from it now that we have like the base layer of information there.
Yeah, and so as a follow-up, like do you envision at some point like adding OpenTelemetry traces to like your core product, for example?
You mean like our backend infrastructure or like
Well, like for your application code.
Yeah, because we use some level of Datadog APM to debug. So there's like a natural hook point that we we would go into and hook up to OpenTelemetry now that we have it set up.
Right.
Datadog was like the we set it up just because it's the natural thing we reached for from previous experience.
Right.
But we're just one step away from OpenTelemetry now.
Right.
Cases in
You've got your foot
OpenTelemetry.
in the door now with OpenTelemetry.
Yeah. It's like all the infrastructure is there. The traceability of the code is there. Like we have contexts in everything in Go.
Yeah.
So that it's easy to pass traces. So I think we're a middleware away, which is a tiny step.
Awesome. That's so great. That's very exciting. And I think it's, the other thing that's super important to underscore here too is the fact that, you had somebody making an outside contribution to your code base.
Wow.
And it speaks to the power of like open source really to be able to have, your codes out in the wild and someone saw this and they're like, hey, I got a cool use case.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, it was a pretty major contribution, which was cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually the first major contribution that we've had. We've had contributions before. They were of a bit smaller scale. So it was exciting on that front as well. But yeah, the cool thing is that we were actually aware of Grafana Tempo, but we didn't think to do that. Like if we had thought about it, I think we would have built it ourselves before. But it's cool that somebody saw the potential, and like just wrote the code. And now it's out there, and it's open source, and anyone can use it. And we actually you guys contributed to it, and there's actually one other company, Commodore.io, which has incorporated a network mapper into their own product and their own open source.
Oh, cool.
Which is cool. It's cool to see people use it like in ways we haven't thought of. That's really, it's like you said, it's the power of open source that we don't need to think about every use case because someone else can think about it and add it. And like all we need to do is to support and go like, yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you basically you've provided the seed and then people are just like, hey, what can we do with this now? Right.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, the pitch for Google Fiber in the United States was, we don't know what people will do with 1 gigabit of data, but we will build it and see what they do. So
yeah,
the network mapper is really that. It's raw data of your network. And it does the collection bit, and then you can just add more and more exporters, this is like an OpenTelemetry exporter. So there's so much you can do with a map of your network. I think every developer product and every cybersecurity product has a map of your network. So it's the most valuable and flexible kind of data for a development team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just spitballing here, but I think a really interesting, I wonder if there could be like a really interesting use case with I don't know if you're aware of the OpenTelemetry demo.
Which one exactly?
So there's a repo called OpenTelemetry demo, and it's basically it's based on like the hipster shop app, which I believe originated with Google, and they've turned it into like a telescope shop now. But it basically showcases like instrumentation with OpenTelemetry, so it's this multi microservices app written in different languages, and so it shows like different instrumentation in different languages with OpenTelemetry. And it started last year, just before KubeCon, and it's turned into this like massively complex but very cool showcase of OpenTelemetry's capabilities. And it made me think of something where, so recently there's this company called Trace Test, where they're part of this company called CubeShop. Trace Test is the product, and they offer trace-based testing. And so basically the idea is like, you're already emitting traces. Why don't we take those traces and create like test cases out of these?
Mhm.
And so they recently integrated trace-based testing into the OpenTelemetry demo to showcase,
Mm.
hey, like we can leverage this to basically run to run like automated integration tests. So then I'm thinking, hey, wouldn't it be kind of cool to like have Authorize, like especially the network mapper, integrated into this demo, showcasing again, like open telemetry,
Yeah.
like the network mapper emitting metrics. So anyway,
Yeah. It's a great idea. Like I wasn't aware of it, but we definitely should do that. And it's funny because most of our tutorials are based on the Google microservices demo too. So we still have the stock shop. It's not a telescope shop. But yeah, I guess that app is everywhere. I've seen it on Calico too and Istio.
yeah.
For sure, that's a good way to help people discover that the network mapper can emit OpenTelemetry metrics. I'm sure it will be useful to a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. And especially, it's like it's an open source tool, working with another open source tool. So
The
yeah.
way God intended.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Um, by the way, so we will be releasing this episode during the week of KubeCon. So by the time everyone's listening, watching, this episode will be out on the Tuesday. Will you be at KubeCon?
Yes, definitely. We'll be in the main area. Damn, I don't know what our booth number is. But maybe
Look
I
for
can
the
check and
otters.
you can. Yeah, look for the others. Maybe I can check and you can edit that in.
Yeah, I can. You know what? I can add it to the show notes once you find the booth name,
Yay.
or booth number, I should say. Do you guys have like really cool swag that you're giving out?
We're gonna have at the booth other plushies and t-shirts, of course.
Of
Oh my
course.
god, the others are so cute. They have like this little key. I wish I had one to show you now.
Damn it. That
It's
means you
like
have
it's
to go to the
been
booth.
yeah. You're gonna be there too.
Yes, I'm going to be at KubeCon. I'm going to be giving a couple of talks there. So one on
Oh,
platform engineering, actually, and
yay! I'll
self-service
come
tooling.
see.
So I feel like it's like very on topic.
Yeah, I'll be in the crowd. I'll go, whoa, Adriana!
I'm gonna now make sure that I visit the booth because I definitely want to score one of those otter plushies.
And socks, will we have socks? Actually, don't know. Last time we had socks, they were a huge hit. I was kind of, the first time we had plushies and socks, I was kind of worried, like, would platform engineers that come to the booth be happy to get those? Like, maybe it's a bit like what do grown-ups do with plushies? But then I was like, no, it's actually a hit, and grown-ups have kids too. So
Yes,
not only are they interested in one plushie for themselves, they need also one for every kid. So
that's
nobody
right.
gets there jealous.
Yeah, that's right. Because if you bring a plushie home and one of them is not for your kid, you are in trouble. It is the law.
Yeah.
I do find the socks are quite popular because I find like for me, t-shirts usually are very hit and miss because I'm very petite, and so if it's not very
Mm.
small and fitted, I swim in the t-shirt. So the socks end up working very well
Yeah.
because you can't go wrong with socks. They generally fit.
Yeah. And startup socks tend to be like happy socks, very colorful.
Yes,
And
exactly.
maybe you don't want to walk around like every day, like branded. So, but the socks are like your little secret.
Yes, exactly. They're perfect. Well, we are just coming up on time, but before we wrap up, are there any parting words of wisdom or hot takes that you would like to share with our audience?
I guess I'll go for the words of wisdom. I'll try. I know I'm
All
not
right.
as smart without my wife. But I guess the thing that I would keep in mind as a developer is to always think about the people that will encounter your code and read your code. A lot of times we think about like the design, the performance, like does it look good? Does it work well? But I think the most important thing to pay attention to is about the people. And sometimes the people includes you. Like I'm sure a lot of people watching have come up on a piece of code they wrote and think like, what the hell? What is this? And then find out it's them a couple years ago.
Oh my God, it's so true. What the hell was I thinking?
Yeah, and it really goes a long way because it's the feeling you get when you use a product and you expect something to be there, or you expect to be able to do something, or even the unboxing experience seems like they thought about the person who's opening the product. If you come upon a confusing bit of code that does something non-trivial and you find a comment that says like why it's this way and like what you should do if you want to change it, like, oh, someone's thought about me. And in some languages like Go, you can go a bit further and use the compiler to do some of that. Like I think if you have a function that is doing IO and it can block, then it's good hygiene to accept the context as a parameter and allow it to be cancelled, because you're not just allowing cancellation, you're communicating, hey, this thing is gonna do something that you may want to cancel. It may block. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing is the compiler then forces the caller to actually make a choice. Like they have to decide which context are they passing in, which is a bit like returning errors. You're saying with the function signature, this thing can fail, which you can't. Not in every language you can do that using exceptions. Java, you can say throws and like an endless list of exceptions.
Yeah, so true.
But there's nothing more fun than in C++ getting an unexpected exception and you're like, what? What? What is even going on? How did this get here? And it's like a leaky abstraction. So yeah, my parting words are, think of the people when you write code, not about the machines, because the machines, they're going to be fine. We're going to throw a bit more CPU and memory at it. The people are more important.
I really love that. Those are really great words of wisdom. Well, thank you so much, Ori, for geeking out with me today. And y'all do not forget to subscribe and be sure to check out the show notes and for additional resources and to connect with us and our guests on social media. Until next time.
Peace out and geek out.
Geeking Out is hosted and produced by me, Adriana Villela. I also compose and perform the theme music on my trusty clarinet. Geeking Out is also produced by my daughter, Hannah Maxwell, who incidentally designed all of the cool graphics. Be sure to follow us on all the socials by going to bento.me/geekingout.